This is the Run Recap.
Is this your second marathon or half marathon, or is it? Or
this is my third
over the years. Your third.
Yeah, no, this is my third. So I did this one. This one last year was my first. So this same race last year was my first.
Okay, I thought that was the case. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and then I ran one in the early spring too. So I ran one in April.
Which one was that? I don't remember that one.
I did. It is called the Split, and so it's one that takes off. Actually, it's a really, really enjoyable course. It's an out and back, we've talked about this several times, but I absolutely hate that.
Right.
But for a half marathon was kind of cool because you're like, oh, I just go, okay, so I ran Bloomsday. Now I'm going to turn around. I'll run Bloomsday again. Now I'm done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
So I kind of liked that actually for that distance was pretty good because, yeah, it just broke that down. I'm like, oh, and I've already ran this. I'll just go run it again. That was no problem. Because at mile 7 for a half marathon, you're not in bad shape at all. You're feeling great at mile 7.
Well, you aren't in bad shape at all.
Yeah, right. Well, if you are trained for a half marathon, then
I would be dying.
Yeah. But yeah, if you are and I'm not trained great for one right now. I'm trained okay, but
yeah.
But not like I was last year. But if you are in that training where like, oh, if you can run 11, 12 miles comfortably, then at mile 7, yeah, you're not hurting, And what I do strategically is like I do try real hard to not push anything for a while until I know how hard I still have left to push. Mm-hmm. So just because it's just so long, I'm out, you're running for an hour and a half at least.
Well, that's where an out and back would actually work pretty well because you know exactly the markers to expect.
Yep. And any uphill you ran, okay, I can use this downhill next time, and you can just kind of adjust with those things where and on that particular course it's just barely, it follows the Centennial Trail from downtown to let's see, was it? Yeah, it's right around downtown somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it started. And then from right inside Riverfront Park, and then follows the Centennial Trail from there out to Minnie and back.
Oh, okay. Minnehaha.
Yeah. So, or John H. Shields Park is what it's officially called.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, about that. Actually, I think the turnaround is actually Boulder Beach, but we just call the whole area Minnie. So it's
Exactly. So your training for this one was, like we've talked about, not ideal, less than you would have preferred. And then I saw a post in a text yesterday that that your body was feeling pretty destroyed. And so take me through. What did it feel like?
Well, this was probably, when it came down to the end of it, it was probably the second hardest I've ever pushed at anything ever to just complete it. So it was really, really hard because I'm not quite trained right. I'm okay. I've been running I've probably been averaging 3 days a week. And that's just not enough to go at the speed that I really want to go at. And so I'm not where I'd like to be as far as hitting the goals I would like for this distance or for this race. And I really wanted a PR this year. I wanted to be under an hour 30. And and that was just, and I knew ahead of time, I'm just not in that shape. That's not going to be possible, and that's okay. So but still go out and enjoy it. And so anyway, cool thing about this course is the first 7 miles are all at about a 1% downhill grade. So you can't tell by looking at it that's downhill. It looks totally flat, but your pace is just faster than you think it should be, and you feel fine. So, and not downhill anywhere near enough. Again, you can't even tell it's downhill. It just technically is. So I think I lost about somewhere between 30 to 50 feet of elevation every mile.
Nice. And that's barely noticeable, or not noticeable.
Yeah, it's not noticeable. You're just not getting as tired as you should. That's about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that makes it really fun because then you can, every stride is just a little bit easier and just a little bit smoother. anyway, so as is just kind of the case right now, because like you mentioned before, little kids and stuff, so then your sleep is horrible, and so I had a rough night's sleep the night before, so I just woke up just tired, not feeling great with all that stuff, but got up early, got my coffee, got my Danish. That's like my pre-race thing. I do that 3 hours before running. And then I have a few other supplements and some, dry scoop pre-workout right before. Which I still need to do. I still have to do that about an hour before, because pre-workout is also still a diuretic. So, got to make sure that
does that hit you that way?
Not very bad, but a little bit. And if I got to run for an hour and a half, I got to make sure all that's taken care of before I start.
Yeah, I've never
stopping mid-run for that.
Experienced that with pre-workout.
Yeah, it's not significant. I think anything with a high amount of caffeine can do that a little bit. So caffeine itself does that a little bit. So anyway, so it's not a big deal. You just kind of have to be extra careful about it when you're going to run for that long. If it was even an hour or less of a run, it's like, well, you can just kind of make do or, kind of just fight through it. But an hour and a half, no, if you got to take care of a problem, you got to take care of a problem.
Right.
So my training, I followed a basic training plan for this, and then just modified it throughout the week based on what I could actually do with the time I had and those things. And so, and probably what I'll do next year or sometime soon, if I can get my sleep better, then I should probably start doing morning runs regularly. Get up at 6 o'clock, get my run in then, rather than hoping I can fit it in later in the day.
Oh man, so yeah, that's the worst. I hate having to think about a workout or a run throughout the day. No, like having it hang over your head. That's just the odds are it's not going to happen. Or even if I'm disciplined enough at that time where it's going to happen, I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's just miserable. But also I think like anything else, you can get used to anything. And it is, and so, but yeah, I hate running in the morning, and I really like running at 3 p.m. That's just my favorite. But that just doesn't practically fit into my workday anymore. It doesn't practically fit into really anything. Like that time needs to be used for a lot of other more important things right now. So 6 a.m. is probably what I need to do, and if I can have more full rest nights, I'll probably do that. So, yeah, should I walk you through the race?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so with this race, here's the way it starts. I'll describe it slightly a little bit, but the course layout is you have about 7 miles of 1% downhill grade. Then you have a pretty good hill, not a hard hill, but you have an out and back that's about 1.5 miles long that goes up a hill, comes back down the hill, and then you're back on the trail, back to that 1% grade again. And you do that all the way until right at mile 12. Then you start to come into Kellogg. And then the last half mile is a pretty tough uphill into downtown Kellogg at the finish line.
Okay.
So, anyway, so the way that worked for me, took off and just felt, just got in a nice stride, got in the place I should be in and everything, and it was just cruising along. And then and then I've got my GPS running in my headphones, so it's telling me what my splits are every half mile. So got that going.
Pause that real quick. So you got your headphones on. Do you listen to anything during races?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, so to go with that, then I kind of deprive myself of a lot of those things when I train, and I save listening to music that would increase energy. I save those for either races or speed days. But on my slow days, I try not to do that.
Gotcha. So when you're training, you do listen to stuff, but you just don't do the type of music that you would listen to during a race. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I do books on tape, podcasts, things like that is what I do on normal training days. And then on a speed day, then I'll put my normal running playlist in.
Interesting.
So, well, this is what I was listening to a podcast by Andrew Huberman talking about increasing your baseline dopamine.
Yeah.
And basically saying, like, if every day when you work out, if you're taking any kind of type of stimulant, so any kind of caffeine, pre-workout and everything, if you do that and you listen to your music, which also increases dopamine, and you do all these things that increase your dopamine, if you're doing it every single day, your baseline lowers because you're constantly boosting it. So, so after hearing that, I'm like, okay, well, I want it to boost hard on days when I need it, basically once a week. And the rest of the time, it's good to deprive myself of it so I can increase my overall baseline. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, so I've been following that pattern, and I think it's really useful because I do find then on race days, then I do get a little extra boost, a little extra energy. Not only do you get it just because also you're just around a bunch of people, that always does it, you know, an actual race, the excitement of doing something you've been planning for, all those things help boost that energy that you don't usually get. And yeah, anyway, it's felt very, very helpful for me. So anyway,
I'm very
so I got
what's on your playlist, but we'll get into that later. Let's finish the race first.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I take off and ran my first half mile. My pops in my headphones and it says, you know, that I'm right at 6:30 pace. I'm like, okay, well that's too fast, but I'm still breathing through my nose. Like I'm not even. So nope, this first part I think is a little bit steeper downhill, like just a little bit more, because I'm just floating. Like everything feels just fine. I'm just going to hang out here. I'm going to ease up a little bit, but I'm going to hang out here. Then finish my first mile still at the same pace, still at 6:30, and then after that I kind of gotten into the position I want to be in. So then I backed off very purposely, and down to just right at 7 flat, and I wanted to stay right at 7 flat because I knew I've got hills coming up and all of that, and I thought, well, I'm going to do the next 2 or 3 miles right at 7-minute pace. So did that. The other thing that boosted energy, it was really fun, was that on this race course, at almost every mile, not exactly at the mile marker, but near the mile marker, there are basically trailheads for this, bike path trail. So Christy and the kids drove to basically every mile and watched me go by, which gave them something fun to do of, hey, let's look for Dad, and cheer on runners. They see me go by, and then we got to jump in the car and try and get to the next one before he gets there. So
that's fun.
Anyway, yeah, so that was also like, man, that was a really fun energy boost, and especially where I knew ahead of time, like I'm not going for a PR because that's literally not possible for me right now. I'm not in good enough shape. So I'm going to go have fun with this race. I'm going to run at an enjoyable pace, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do good, but I'm not, I'm just going to go where it feels really fun and nice, and then, and then keep looking for my kids and stuff. And so gave them high fives at basically every time I saw them, and yeah, it was just a blast. So, and I didn't realize how much, if you look at that from a physical or physiological standpoint, there it as far as boosting energy, that had a great effect for that. That was really, really fun. So and even just to know well, yeah, and you know how much energy you get from watching your kid enjoy something. And and they were stoked every time. So it's like, oh, that's fun. Now we get to play a game here. I didn't just drag my family over to Kellogg's so that I can go run by myself. So like, no, they got to have fun too and everything. So that that was also a great energy boost, and it was really, really fun. So anyway, and the course follows this trail, and it goes right along the river that runs from Wallace to Kellogg, and the trees are all changing colors, just beautiful as can be. It was also really sunny out, so it was a slightly cold start, but only for the first quarter mile. And then as soon as you're in the sun, it was just comfortable to be in shorts and a tank top. It was just absolutely perfect. Yeah. And it was a high of 81 that day. I think I probably finished the race, and I think it was still under 70 when I finished. So, just a great running temperature. And I think we were in the high 50s when I started. So high 50s and sunny. So just ideal.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. So cruising through there now at mile 3, I all of a sudden my GPS decided to just completely freak out. Now, the unfortunate thing was
that.
Yeah, and I'm running my GPS off my phone because my phone is usually more accurate. If one of them is going to freak out, my watch freaks out before my phone will. So I'm running it off my phone because that tends it usually is much more accurate. And I still don't have. Last year when I ran this race, I started my GPS on my watch a little while after the start because I forgot to hit the button, so it didn't calculate any credit for my half marathon PR. So I was like, okay, I got to make sure I do that this time. So I started my phone early on purpose because then I can go later and cut it down to the actual start and just do that.
Yeah.
And here, full on fails. I'm like just so drastically bad. I've never even seen it fail this bad before. It was so crazy. So what happened then is it kept bouncing me all over the place. So at sometimes I'm getting splits in my headphones every 30 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
Like previous mile in 21 seconds, previous mile in 2 minutes or whatever. And it just keeps interrupting my music and saying these things like, now I have no idea what pace I'm doing or anything. So at mile 5, I then started my watch doing the exact, basically started recording on my watch right at mile 5 so I can at least see my splits and know where the heck I'm actually at. So I ran that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to waste the energy or time to take my phone out, stop it on my phone, and then put it back again. No. So instead, I just got like this stupid stuff interrupting my music the whole time. And anyway, completely driving me crazy. So,
that's so frustrating.
Yeah, so that distraction was not helpful, And it was so accurate before that. The first 3 miles, it was telling me, or first 2 miles was exactly on. I saw the mile marker, and as I crossed the mile marker, my phone would tell me I'm at the 1 mile. Like, it's so perfect. And then I ran past, and I knew there was a problem. I ran past the 3 mile marker, and it didn't say anything. And then I'm like a half mile past the 3 mile marker, and it's still not saying anything. And then it started just talking nonstop. So according to my GPS, I ran 24.5 miles and broke several world records.
I mean, obviously, you're just that kind of shape, man.
Yeah, I'm just that fast. And Strava flagged it. Like, this isn't real. Like, obviously it's not real. So anyway,
Strava sent you a notification saying that the reading was inaccurate.
Yeah. When I was done, then it got flagged because again I broke like several world records by a long ways. So
that's hilarious.
I literally had a 20-second 1 mile run. Like I ran a mile in 20 seconds.
For some reason, it's funny to me that they have something in place to like let you know that you were not that fast, or that it was, I don't know, something is tracking it within their system to tell you that it was incorrect. I don't know why that's funny to me.
I think they do it because you have all kinds of things on Strava where you can compete with other people for different segments and stuff. And it doesn't want to give you this award saying, hey, you're the fastest in this section if it's obvious that you were not actually running or there was an error or something like that. So that way people aren't going out driving a car for this segment.
Yeah.
Of course, you could actually probably pull that off just fine if you just drove slow enough to be realistic. But I think that's why, because it does actually have, like, it holds records for different distances and stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, so, I don't know about that Strava stuff. I'm a Garmin guy myself, so I don't know how all that works.
Well, and now, obviously, I need to do something like that because my current stuff is not working. My watch is not accurate. My phone's been off several times. And not like Garmin doesn't screw up sometimes. My friends that have those, they sure seem to be way more consistent. So it's something that's purpose-built for that.
I don't have near as many issues as you have had. Also, although, to be fair, don't run as far as frequently as you do. But still, that's unfortunate. Okay,
so annoying.
Wait, did you take out your phone at least to turn it off so you're not hearing that?
No, because I have it because I lock it. Like I have to take it out of its case and then put it in its pouch. Because having a phone on you while running is so irritating anyway too, because if you don't have it just right, it bounces around on you and things like that. And so I just didn't want to, as soon as I move it, then I'm going to have more problems, not less. And I don't want a full on stop to do this. And while I run, then I'm going to ruin my cadence here, and then I got to get back on. And anyway,
Totally.
So I probably should have just stopped it, but I didn't. I just let it go. I also thought that maybe when I finish, I at least recorded the time, and maybe I can go in and edit it to say, no, but move the line back because there's some editing you can do after the fact.
Oh, okay.
And so I was hoping I could do that, but you can't edit to that degree. So mostly I can just crop the beginning and end a bit. I can get rid of sections, but I can't move sections to make them more accurate.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, it's too bad. But I was hoping at least I got the data, so then I can go and fix that. The one thing it was good for is at least it was telling me what my overall time was, because since I started my watch at mile 5, I still did not know where I was at as far as what's my time looking like for finishing time. So overall, at least when it pop up and tell me that I'm at whatever mile it's making up at that point, but it was telling me you have been running for this long, and that was my only way of knowing that because I didn't have a stopwatch going. So anyway, so that was helpful. So at least I look at a mile marker and remember, about a minute ago it said I was at this pace or this time, and then I can calculate the paces and do all that stuff. So. Oh my gosh!
So now you're having to do like math during your race.
Yeah, which for me, we talked about this before also, but for me it's good. That is a nice. Yeah, it is helpful for my brain to just have some other distraction like that, or just sitting there doing that and you forget that you're running. So. Anyway, mile 7 started that uphill point then, and that out and back uphill, and just felt great. Just cruising up there, and didn't push the uphill, but I knew how long it was this time, so that was really nice. So I just kept nice long strides. I didn't shorten the strides at all, just kept nice long strides. Just cruised up the hill, and then when I turned around to come down, I'm really going to, I'm going to drop down to like low 6s down this hill and just kind of let gravity really take me. And it turned around and started to go, and it didn't feel downhill, like at all. And and the first part, it isn't that steep, but as it got steeper, still felt the same, like, okay, I'm in rougher shape right now than I thought I was. So now I'm at mile 8 and heading down, and like, okay, this is going to be a challenge because I should feel like I'm falling down this hill, and I don't. I feel like I'm working down this hill still at 7 to 7:30 pace, somewhere in there. But anyway, so that was the first sign. Got to the bottom, got a 90 degree left turn at the bottom of the hill. So went through that and then tried to take like 3 fast steps to get right back into my pace again, and they weren't there. They just weren't there. Turned the corner, like slowly got back into pace, but everything in me was like, okay, 3 fast steps, and then you're right back. And the energy wasn't there. I'm like, oh man, okay, that's not good, So still cruising along, but still dead on. I'm just at 7:30s. So still right where So I was started at 6:30, then I was like at 7s for a little while, and then dropped back to 7:30s, and like that's not a bad place to be. Really, if in the end I was anything sub 8 with the condition I'm in currently, I'm happy. Yeah. And I wanted to be under the 140 mark, but as long as I'm sub 8 minutes, I'm happy. So not too worried about it. So anyway, so it's still there, but I'm like the 7:30s that'd be a nice pace. At least that's more enjoyable. As soon as you get closer to 8s, it tends to get a little bit more pounding, and so I really want it to be a little quicker where it's still smoother. And so anyway, just cruising along there, and I just stayed static right there. And then the other fun thing about this race is then at mile 10, they start a 5K from mile 10, so we all finish at the same place. So when I see the 5K, a cool thing I did last year, and I did this year too, is like, okay, now I just got to run a 5K. Right. So I've done this. Now race a 5K. So I ran did a 10-mile warm up. Now race a 5K, and felt that boost from just that mentality change. And last year I felt that boost from that mentality change till I came to the very last hill. So I thought I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna take off here and just stride it out, maybe drop down to low 7s, and then see if I can maintain. So anyway, so for mile 10 to mile 11, felt that boost of like, cool, we're almost there. You can always run a 5K, right? I mean, they take, in my head, they take 15 minutes. Of course they don't.
Of course.
And they never have. But it's always like, you just got to run. You got 15 minutes left. Of course you can go 15 minutes,
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah, exactly.
even close to those times. But that's what's in my head. And so did that, and I made it a mile with that energy boost. And then things just shifted quick. All of a sudden, every time I'd go below 7:30 pace, I feel like I'm going to puke. Like I'm really going to. Something in my tummy is not right. And it was sitting high, like that's, like I was burping something, and I don't even know what, because like I haven't eaten in a long time now at this point, and I haven't drank any water for the run at all. Like I know there's nothing in there. Why am I burping right now? So that's doing that, and then another, and I'm just feeling, so at 7:30 I'm fine. As soon as I just stride out a little more, nope, I'm going to have to stop and puke if I do that. And I'm starting to breathe pretty hard at this point. My legs are starting to feel kind of numb. Like I can't tell what they're doing. I can't really tell them what to do anymore. Like it all unwound so quick. At mile 10, I'm feeling pretty good. I can tell the energy's gone, but mile 11, my will to go on was shot. Like just,
oh no,
this is miserable. I can't get this to go. I might throw up. And then the whole stomach thing shifted lower. I'm like, oh, crap. Now am I going to have diarrhea on this thing? Do I have to find a bathroom?
Yeah.
And real honestly, if I start to find a bathroom right now, I'm not finishing. I'm calling Christy. She can come get me. But I'm not going to go a mile and a half after that. I am just done, just because I just didn't have it in me at all at that point.
Right.
So mile 11, everything's falling apart on me. My stomach's hurting. Everything's in rough shape. So anyway, and I'm just trying to keep going. So I get through mile 11, and just, man, my will to keep going was just not there. It was a guy I was running near, and, and I'm in the top. I think I got 25th or so. So I'm, right in that range. And so everyone I'm running with is all, they're quick and stuff. And I had a guy I was running with who was in really, really good shape. And he kept getting ahead of me and then walking, and I'd catch him. And then he'd get ahead of me again, then walk. Like he was also shutting down. Clearly it was getting hard, where he's like, okay, I'm going to need a short break here. So, so anyway, so he kept going through that, and I'm feeling the same, but also feeling like if I walk now, that's going to be, I'm not getting going again. So I have to keep this going. I can't take a break, and so I'm just going and going. And then even passing like aid stations, like, okay, do I need water? No, don't put water in there. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
So let's not do that. And so just continued through. And but I just started, it was feeling horrible. Then I get into, I hit, mile, so I just finished, so then, so that was mile 11, mile 12, or just that, going into mile 12, then also feeling worse, just undoing, and we're going into now we're going into the last mile. And so the last mile is a half mile of still down, and then a half mile of a real hard hill. And I know I've got this hill coming up, but I'm like, I'm too late to now reserve anything for it. So I can't do anything with that. So now I just got to go. Like I just got to hang in there and make this work. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I get to now I've got a half mile left, get through that corner. And this year, now the hard thing about these corners is because it goes through a downtown area, it turns corners. So you're going up a hill, then it turns a corner, then goes up another hill, then turns another corner, goes uphill. So you don't know how long you got. You can't see the top of the hill. So before this race this time, I counted the corners. I know I've got 5 corners to the finish line. So anyway, I turned first corner, start up the hill. So there's 1. Okay, that goes up around, and I just put my head down. I look about 10 feet in front of me, and I'm just like, dude, we're going 10 feet at a time. That's it. You're not looking higher than this, and you're just counting the corners. Mm-hmm. And when you get to the 5th corner, then you get to go downhill, and then you're going to lose anything you got to get this little downhill to the finish line real quick. And just kept pushing up this thing. I had 2 guys blow by me like I'm standing still, like they were ready for this hill. And then a few other people that were also just undone, and now they're walking past them. Yeah. So he's got like this, everyone's in different stages for how well they prepared for this part. Yeah. And but I'm just like, just stay steady. I don't care how fast you're going, just go faster than walking. That's all that matters right now, and look 10 feet ahead. So I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then finally came around, last corner, was coming down a hill, and then looked down at the finish line and just went as fast, was pumping my arms like crazy just to try and get some momentum going. And I definitely picked up my pace. I probably got down to like 6-minute pace for that, 150 meters. Right. And, got through the finish line and was stumbling through the finish line and like,
oh my God,
not in an okay place. Like that was literally it. And felt like the only time I've pushed this hard before was doing that 4x4x48 a couple years ago.
I was just going to ask if it was similar to that. That's really funny.
The type of pushing had to be similar to that, which is weird. I've never felt that in an endurance race before. So in a regular race, I've never felt that. And then kind of like that emotional breakdown afterwards, even like that didn't really happen, but you could feel it like trying to happen. And and just kind of a little bit just full on delirium by the end. And it was really, it was something else. So got through that, and then I just had to like sit and not talk for a while. Just sat, hung out, sipped on Gatorade for quite a long time. And and it took me out, and it was hard. The rest of the day was then hard, where that was so difficult on me. And I don't think it was as physically difficult as it was mentally difficult, where I think the fatigue from having bad sleep and all that stuff was all just like, you can only do so much. And definitely hit the end of what I had. There was not anything left after that, and in hindsight, you're always like, oh, well, maybe I could have done this, and even now I'm trying to like resist the temptation to be like, I could have done another mile. No, I really couldn't. No, that was it.
That you were done.
So I was really, really done, and it might have gotten dangerous had I needed another mile.
Yeah. Man, what do you think you could have done? Obviously you could have, prepared better and whatnot, but as far as your training plan looking back, like, are there days leading up you could have done differently, or weeks leading up? Like, obviously aside from the ideal training, you could have had,
like, there was the actual plan.
But aside from that, do you think there was any changes in hindsight that you could have made to the plan?
I think with what I had to work with this year, I think this is just what it was. And that was kind of a nice thing about it too, where, it wasn't, I wasn't really excited or proud of how I did. I also wasn't disappointed in how I did. It was just, this is an accurate representation of where I'm at. And I think I pushed as hard as I could for what I had, and this is what I had. And I think I trained very well for the time that I had to do it. I could have, of course, done more. If I can't train more, then this is what you're going to get with this amount of training. And actually, I felt really good with how I did, because I ended up at 138, and my average pacing for the whole race was 7:30 on the dot. And
that's great.
I'm really happy with that. And and I felt for how much work I had put in, that was actually still really, really good. So so I don't have any complaints at all. It was like, well, of course I fell apart at mile 11. I've only ran that much distance, since spring. I've only run further than that one time. So I wasn't properly trained to go that much distance, really, and especially at at those speeds. So it just wasn't fair.
A week ago, you did your 5-mile loop twice. You did 12 miles. Do you think that was potentially too close to the race?
I don't think so. I felt fully recovered from that. Yeah, cool. No, I think a week away was real good. Well, and then that was something I was thinking about is, so they always train us, and I think this might be, it'd be interesting if you have some insight on this, but generally all training now follows what became standard for marathon training. With marathon training, you never run 26 miles. You run up to like You might hit like 22 miles or something like that. And I don't know. I haven't done actual marathon training, but I've watched friends do it and heard about the training. I've seen a lot of training plans. And so you do that and then about 2 weeks before the race, and my timing might be off too. Someone that knows more about that can correct me. But about 2 weeks before the race, you start tapering, where you run way slower and you drop your mileage way back. You still run, so your legs keep moving, but you back way off of your training for a couple weeks, and then you do it. And I remember people telling me that some of the idea behind that is that, first of all, that our bodies can't sustain running 26 miles over and over again, and that you need to recover, you need your legs to be ready, and that's how the best way to make them fresh. And then I'm not convinced that's true, especially, and I'd love to hear someone's thoughts on people that are now doing, because it was, 20 years ago, 26 miles is about the first you ever heard of anyone running. And now you have people doing distances way beyond that. And it makes me then wonder if the thoughts on tapering, because we sure didn't do that in high school. We would consider race day race days is one of your 2 hard days during the week, right? You have a speed day, you got race day, and then between, of course, you're doing recovery days. But anyway, it makes me wonder if that's necessary.
Yeah. Well, here's my quick thought on that is high school preparation for racing is so different than college, which is then even different from elite, because you're not looking for a singular performance in high school. You're looking for an aggregate total performance that can get you to either your team to advance or you yourself to advance to the more important races, right? So like if you are, a state, if you're a 2-miler that you are fairly confident you're going to go to state, then you might be able to back off times a little bit and have reserves, assuming that you're confident that you can make all of the qualifying races or up into the qualifying races. But you're going to have to, you're not saving the reserves like you might for an elite runner might, where they're preparing a year for a singular race, and everything else, all the other races up until then, is just like practice, where you're going not 100% exertion, you're doing your 80% exertion. So I think there's some of that where it depends on what level you are and how often you have to perform, because a high school runner, you're having to go all out every race unless you are, the top 3 in the state or country where you don't have to. Right. And so I think obviously my training in college was so different, but we would start tapering before conference championships. We would start tapering our workouts about 2 weeks prior, about maybe 3 weeks prior actually, where we would start backing off. And then the week leading up to a conference championship would be, we'd be running 1060s. Obviously, we're talking sprinting now, so change gears mentally for you. We're doing 1060s at maybe 70%. We're doing a hard stride, keeping our leg speed, and that's it. Not breathing hard at all, just keeping flow going. And so, but long distances, half marathons and marathons, I know that things have definitely changed. I'm sure the research has changed since, you and I were younger, and I don't know what people are doing these days with like you're saying, that so many people doing ultra marathons and doing such long distances. But I remember learning a long time ago that it takes an entire month for your body to completely recover from a marathon. So that would support the idea of a marathon's training where you wouldn't want to run that far at that much exertion, ever in the training plan, because you wouldn't. Sure. You need the time to build back up. And also, I think energy and intention behind your race is a big deal, because we talk about ultra marathoners. running their, 50 miles, 100 miles, whatever it is. And that my beef with that is if you're not running, it's not a run. If you have to walk during a run,
Right.
I don't consider that a run, which I understand the flaws in that, but that's kind of my hard take on it. And so you have the elite guys that do run the entire time of an ultra marathon, and that, well, one, their fitness level is different, but they also, I wonder what their training plan is when they're actually doing that. How often are they not running ultras like that?
It makes me really wonder because, so here's the bigger picture that what I see then is all training plans then have this long tapering period, even when it's shorter distances. And what I felt was following the plan that I had, 12 miles was the furthest I was going to run. But there's nothing wrong with my body, especially 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, putting in 14 or 15 miles instead. I can recover from that just fine. And make it so the 13 feels slow. Just to make the 13 feel short, And if I was running a 5K, that's what I'd do. I'd definitely go out and race 7 miles a few weeks prior, so that 5K felt like, oh, no problem. I just go out and run for a second.
Yeah, I don't have anything against going a further distance as long as the pacing is correct. Like I actually agree with what you just said. I think going further than the race you're intending to do at the correct point in the training plan is the right thing to do, as long as you're not like going fast. You need to be going at like 70% or something, around that point.
Which is what I did with that 12 mile, last weekend. I would have wanted it to be, if I was going to go further distance than that, I would have wanted that to be more like 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think I'm going to adjust my plan. Yeah, next half marathon training, I think I'm going to adjust the plan to put in some really long mileage. Do 3 or 4 miles longer than whatever my race is. A couple, maybe a month before. And because that mental block.
Good.
Well, I fixed the speed mental block. I fixed with the 10-800s. Right, so that is why I fell into 6:30 pace and was just comfortable. Like this just feels good,
Totally.
And it wasn't tired. I wasn't breathing hard because my body's like, yeah, we can just do this, not a big deal, And so I already fixed that block there, but I didn't fix the distance block, and nowhere in my training was there the ability to fix that distance block, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. And if you look back to your high school days, those workouts you were doing, what is a cross country high school race at the longest? It's
5K.
5. It's a 5K, right? It's much longer than 3
it's 5K.
Right?
It's either a 3 mile or a 3.1. That's it.
Yeah, and your trainings are routinely 14 miles a day, right?
Yeah, between 10 to 14, especially if you're doing your morning runs. Because you're running.
That's what I'm saying, because you guys would do one in the morning, then one at night, often.
Yeah, at least 3 every morning. And then at night, it was real normal that we'd be somewhere between, 7 to 11, once you count warm-ups, warm-downs, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Usually at 7 to 11.
And that's coming from one of the best distance coaches in the country. So why would you not extrapolate that further?
And our mileage was low compared to what some other schools did too. So that was something that Tyson would talk about a lot. And now it's always so long ago, so I have trouble remembering perfectly. But we'd have the other schools in town that would have like 3 really, really good guys. It seemed like those were the 3 guys that could handle the mileage that they were putting on them, and would do well. And then a lot of the other team couldn't handle that, so that they never could perform quite like that. And Tyson was always trying to get all 100 of us to be, the fastest. So you didn't have to have the genetic makeup that just can handle that training. He was trying to help us all be able to do it. And so because of that, our mileage was a little bit lower. But we also didn't have the stress fractures. We didn't have the injuries that a lot of other teams had. And yet still, 10 to 14 miles a day is still, that's pretty high mileage.
Well, and even, that is true that the mileage is often dependent upon the individual, and you can't generalize that to everybody. I mean, when you hear our grandpa who coached Jerry Lindgren, phenomenal high school runner, and the mileage he was putting in was insane. It was way too much, and I think I've even heard Grandpa say that it was way too much, but that was more of a environmental and mental break for him as a runner, not a physical training plan as much.
Well, and there were a number of guys you hear stories about during that time period in the 60s and 70s. A lot of the best runners were guys that would go out and just do, 3-4 times that everyone else was doing. I mean, just like mileage that would break most people, and they just go out and do it anyway. And, and I think maybe that's the breakdown of like, some people are built different. And
I think where that's completely true.
Yeah, where I do think we all can, I think most humans can be good endurance athletes. I think in our, the basics of how humans are made can be good endurance athletes. That doesn't necessarily mean just because this guy can handle 200 miles a week, that, or whatever, it doesn't mean we all can do that without our bones starting to break, and some people, definitely there's varying degrees of what people can handle as far as how much abuse their bodies can take.
Yeah, and they're obviously, we all know there is such a thing as overtraining that a lot of people experience, even at a high level. I had a rival, not a rival. He was a little better than me. Still kind of a rival though. But a kid I would pole vault against in college, and a nemesis that I wasn't gonna beat. Yeah, I mean, I think that we were in the same category. He just was always a tiny bit above me. Like he would win conference, and I would place mid-level at conference. Anyway, but I remember talking to him. This is years after college, and he was talking about, he's a multi-event college athlete, so he would do the pole vault, and I think he'd do the decathlon, and then he would also, so do the decathlon, which is 10 events, and then he would do the high jump, the pole vault, and I think a running event even. I don't remember. So he would do a ton of stuff, and so the coaches had him on this just insane training plan until I want to say his senior year, where he put his foot down and he was like, I'm just not doing anything that you're telling me to do anymore. He's like, he more or less worked with, I think, just one of his coaches, I think his pole vault coach, and came up with what their training plan was going to be, and told the head coach and everyone else, just, I'm not doing it. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm being overtrained. I'm working too hard. My body needs more rest. And then his senior year, like, his numbers did awesome. Like, he was scoring so many points for the team as it was. They kind of had to let him make that decision, and he felt great. Another decathlete that I trained with at Eastern, he was taking so many anti-inflammatory, like ibuprofen was like candy for him. And his same thing, senior year, stopped the decathlon and just went to single event focus. And he's like, I feel amazing. Like, finally, he's not breaking his body down every 3 weeks when there's a big event. So we know that overtraining is a huge aspect, but man, some guys, they just need that ridiculous training split.
Yeah, no, that's two things there, but one is you do see that happen in track, and people that are doing multiple events, you then have multiple coaches, and all the coaches they want you to do the best in their event, and every event, it needs a full-time training regimen for that event. And I wasn't one that did that. I mean, I did that a little bit, like in junior high for a second, but I was always doing just distance ones, so my training basically was the same. Even when I was doing multiple events, they were all similar events. But but yeah, I watched you do that a little bit with doing, you had running, sometimes multiple running events and pole vaulting, and at least they were all sprinting, so again, in the vicinity of each other, but it'd be easy to overtrain. Yeah. But, and I guess especially with pole vaulting, you have a lot of upper body work, but upper body work is really helpful for sprinting too. But I can see when you have 3 coaches and they all want you to be the best at their event, then all of a sudden, you're being pulled all kinds of directions. Yeah, I can't imagine if I stayed with pole vaulting, like if I ever could figure out how to do that thing, and then was distance running, it'd be like, okay, those 2 things would be very opposed to each other, and it'd be hard to be good at either one of them.
Yeah, that's what blows me away with like decathletes, where they're doing, they'll go from a pole vault or a high jump, which is a very explosive, short discipline, and then they have to go run a mile, which is short in distance terms, but not short as far as sprinting goes.
Might be why most of them aren't very good at that. So I mean, they're oftentimes they're. I mean, as a decathlete, you do have to be so well-rounded. Obviously, you're not going to be the best. You might have an event or 2 that you're really exceptional at, and the other ones you're pretty darn good, And but we got to go and help with one of the races for the Olympic trials. And this is back. Do you remember the ads for Dan and Dave? They were both Reebok athletes.
Yeah. Dan O'Brien and Dave. I don't remember.
We don't know who Dave is anymore because he didn't make the pole vault. So he didn't. It was really unfortunate. Pole vault. I mean, better than me. I watched enough of it and did it just a teeny bit. But man, pole vaulting is so rough because you have a bad day. Now you don't get to go to the Olympics, and because you couldn't go that extra 3 inches that you can go in your sleep. But today it doesn't work. And man, I remember watched that happen. I remember watching live because they hyped up Dan and Dave so much. So we were going to have our gold and silver, and we weren't sure which one were going to be which. But those 2 guys were the best. Is what the way Reebok at least was advertising it that way.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that, and Dave didn't make 18 feet, and at that level, that shouldn't have been hard. And I remember the news saying at the time that, like, that's not a hard height for him at all. And, didn't make that, didn't go to the Olympics. And
and what's frustrating for pole vaulting specifically is, I mean, I can't speak to his specific jump, but those misses, especially even at a relatively low height, even though 18 feet is not a low height for most people,
right?
You can track that back to his arm wasn't placed over his head, directly over his head. It was off to the side by an inch. Or his planting foot that he jumps off of was too far in front, 3 inches, or too far behind 3 inches. It's pole vaulting is such an exact event that a huge problem, especially the higher you go, the huge problem can happen by a very small change. I mean, when I had a huge fall in college where I knocked myself out, and I think I was out for like 45 seconds. I had a really bad fall. And it was all because my right arm, my top hand, when you leave the ground, was off to the side a little bit. It wasn't straight over my body. And so that led to just cascading events, and that ended up me falling and hitting my head on the stand on the way down and getting a concussion. And it's unfortunate that such a small thing can go so terribly bad in pole vaulting.
Well, it makes me wonder too is how many things I know in other sports that I do, if I'm a little bit sore in a different way in a different spot, then all of a sudden my body does not move to the exact same locations that it would yesterday. And how often is that? How often did something yesterday tweak something just a teeny bit? Or let's say you lifted slightly harder a few days before. Now you're kind of sore. So now your elbow doesn't move in like it used to. You'd have to force it.
Yeah.
And now when you're in that flow state, your body's just going where it's supposed to, right? And now, but you have a slight mobility restriction, and now you don't. And now, like in your case with that fall, all of a sudden could have been catastrophic.
Yeah. I mean,
you were, I remember watching, you were a half inch from that being game over.
The only reason I didn't break my back, I'm convinced of, is because I knocked myself out on the way down. So when I hit, I landed on this small metal track, like an eighth of an inch thick, right on my spine. In the video, you can kind of see my body go limp about halfway down.
Yeah.
Because I was out long enough for, I think Dad was in the stands, and so out long enough for him to realize something was bad, I'm not getting up, and then to cross the track and make it all the way over to where I was, because when I woke up, he was there. Mm-hmm. So that's a good, like, minute, probably 45 seconds to a minute or so.
And we weren't very low in the stands at the time either. So
right.
We were we were up there a little ways.
Yeah, I mean, and just the smallest things can have a very, very big damaging effects, especially when it comes to something as specific as pole vault. I don't remember why we were talking about that though.
Oh, because of just like you're a little bit more sore that day. You know, we're talking about. That's
yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Because Dan and Dave, where Dave had he had a bad day and didn't go to the Olympics. That's it. And not even a horrible day, a slightly bad day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember watching you do that several times, where heights that you could do in your sleep, all of a sudden, like things didn't line up that day. So now you can't do that height today. You know, tomorrow maybe you could, maybe the next day you could, but today it just doesn't line up right. And then all of a sudden it's a difference between making a height or not making a height. It's not like the rest of us running where it's like, oh, I had an off day, so I'm 2 seconds slower. Mm-hmm. You know, it's so much more in some of those field events to where, you know, because you have an actual standard of I hit this height or I don't. That's it. Mm-hmm. You know, 2 seconds, 2 inches lower doesn't mean like, oh, slightly off. No, you actually just now didn't do it.
Yeah, you didn't achieve the thing you're trying to. Yeah, and especially for me, I was so I had so many mental blocks when it came to pole vaulting, and not necessarily I had some true mental blocks, but also mental blocks as far as just unpreparedness mentally, because my highest I went in college was my freshman year, and I had never went that height again in a meet. But I was on pace to, I was on pace to hit Olympic trials.
You kept hitting heights like that in practice. You kept hitting real high ones in practice. Yeah, and then when it was important, something was off that day and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And that was
the smallest little things. At that time in college, Olympic qualifying was 17.4, and I remember there's one specific day where I did 17.6 in practice. But in a meet, I just didn't have I didn't put enough preparation into the visualizations and kind of what you're doing with your running into the preparation of environment, of visualizing the correct mental state and the correct environment and walking through all the technical steps and spending that extra time. You know, I showed up to practice. I worked out as hard as anybody else. I kept up. I made sure I was always in the top or near the top of all of my workouts. But once practice was done, that was it. You know, I put no effort into anything beyond that. I would either go home and eat or play some music or go skateboard. Like my mind was then shut off of pole vaulting as if it didn't exist until the next day when I had to do it again. And that, to me, that's what made my pole career unsuccessful, was I just wasn't interested in taking the step to make it serious. I did enough to keep my scholarship, but I didn't achieve close to what I know I had the potential to, because I just wasn't there. But going back to imbalances, what an amazing thing that I've learned over the years now, becoming a trainer and working with clients, is all of the little things that, like you're saying, that can change your gait slightly and have such profound effects that you just don't even notice. You feel kind of off, and it can change the way your foot strikes and the way you push and the amount of force you have behind each stride. so quickly on something that you might even notice, not even realize is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
I've noticed that so many times, and one that kind of goes back to the 10-800s. Same thing, right? You do this other thing, and then all of a sudden it makes this other thing all of a sudden work better because you trained this other thing way harder and broke down something mentally, broke down something physically, and all of a sudden you have this your stride elongates. So now I don't have to feel like I'm running as fast to run faster. And or even taking Christy's kickboxing class where the warming up is tons of bouncing. And when do you do that in real life? And I realize I probably don't, in my running training, I probably don't work out my calf enough in order to have that launch from, in order to make my stride longer. So then I'm working too hard because I'm hitting the ground so much. I got that high turnover speed at 7-minute miles, and I could actually have a slower turnover speed and run 6-minute miles, if I just worked on getting my calf in a little better shape, so I have a little more launch to the next step, so my steps are a little bit longer. Just things like that. I accidentally found that because I just was doing this class to support Christy, and then all of a sudden, oh, whoa, that is a different thing there. And noticing on all that bouncing, warming up, I'm just dying because I don't do that. My calf is not in shape to sit there and bounce. It's just killing me. Christy's, of course, doing just fine because, she bounces like she weighs 10 pounds. But, but, that was so hard for me. But, was that developing that thing, doing a different thing that's not running, made it so then running at higher speeds was way more effortless. And just putting that together.
Yeah, it's such a big thing that we don't do as we get older, like little things we take for granted, but being on our toes and working our calves when we're little just happens all the time. But as we get older, we don't do it as near as often.
And I'm careful not to actually train my calves too much because it's real easy to overwork them and then not be able to walk for a week. So just doing your what do you call those? What do you call it when you put your toes on something and you lift up?
Calf raises.
There we go. What's the thing that you use your calf and then you raise? What words do you use to put that together?
I'm looking for a thing that works my biceps, kind of like in a curling action. I wonder what
curling motion. Yeah, what would I don't know. You're the pro, so you probably know what those are called. But no, so those things I've done those before, holding 20-pound dumbbells or something like that. So I don't feel like I'm doing anything. And while I'm working them out doing it, I also still feel like I'm not doing anything. It feels totally fine.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I now literally can't walk.
Yeah.
So then I get scared to train them at all because I don't want to not be able to walk for days. And so
which is no different than, unfortunately, the opposite of what you should be doing, because all that means, and I honestly I'm in the same category as you, it means you should just be training your calves more consistently. But that fear sets in of that you don't want to ruin something, or you don't want to affect your running plan or whatever you have going on.
So I'm trying to do some of those training things at times when, in the off season. So when I'm not training for something specific, and I don't have a deadline that's coming up too quick. So when I have a far off deadline, then I want to do the hard leg day training. So same thing. I'll do squats, but I do squats really light. I do a little bit higher rep, really low weight, because if I don't do that, again, I could accidentally overwork. And then again, the next day I can't walk right. Now all of a sudden I can't do the run I'm supposed to do tomorrow, and it throws everything off. I still do them in order to keep my mobility, basically, but I don't do them to try and get stronger at all.
Yeah.
And
which you should do on your out of season training. You should go heavier with those type of lifts to get your legs stronger, and then back off when you get into an actual training, or when you get into out of the first phase of the training program.
Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for race season ends next week. Basically, I don't think I have. You never know. A fun race might pop up, and I might just go and do it on a whim. But like I'll probably do like the turkey trot or something like that. But as far as races I like really care about and enjoy, Wild Moose Chase is next weekend. And so that's a 10K in Riverside State Park, some pretty serious hills, really fun trail run. So that's next week. And that one also, like, again, I'm not trained to kill it there, but I'm just going to go and really enjoy it. And but once that ends, then it's going to be fun to go and go fix some of these things where I struggled this year. And I struggled this year. I had weaknesses in my hills were really, really weak this year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited to go and actually work on the squats real hard, work on those calves, do that stuff. And not bad for getting ready for snowboard preparation too.
It's perfect timing for that.
Yeah. So so after next week, start kind of beefing up a little bit. I wouldn't mind putting on another 5 pounds and and do a lot of heavier weight. And and work on that explosiveness, maybe even do the stair climber quite a bit. So that'd be something that I really like to.
Good.
But my thought is with those that the stair climber thing sure seems to help with simulating hill running, with really steep hill running, and anyway, so throwing that in there too. But again, it's another thing that I get too sore from, so I shy away from it when I have an event coming up.
Totally. Well, I mean, as you should. All of the heavy strength lifts you should be doing should be in the early stages or prior to your running plan. Like they shouldn't happen towards the end anyway. You should be focusing way more on speed and endurance during those phases, and doing exactly what you're doing the lifts that you like with lighter weight and higher reps, and not worrying about how heavy it is.
Yeah, so we'll see how this winter goes. But I think that's time to change that mindset right now into getting ready for that. And I have noticed that getting in shape for snowboard season has been really good for having that focus. And then when you get towards spring, then starting to put the two together and move back out of it. And I don't think it's a bad thing at all for my overall fitness. Seems to work really good with those changes of focuses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Next time we should talk a little more about what you do intentionally for snowboard season, if you do anything. But I should probably get bouncing here pretty soon.
You don't want to make this a 3-hour podcast? We could make it a 3-hour.
So far, I don't think we've actually gone that long. I think it's more with all the guests we have. But yeah, I gotta go.